And a lot of times I think we have all of that already built within us. Like we already have all that power. We already have all of the knowing. We already have all of the things. We just let all the noise consume us. We let all of the things going on outside of us like dictate what's going on inside of us. And it's full. Like, yes, you need outside influence to be able to get context, to be able to get perspective. You need all of that. Don't misunderstand me. That part is true. But there's a difference in getting context outside of yourself and listening to the noise. My mom is interior design, and she actually, part of her degree was like textile something or other, and so she likes fabric. I mean, in fairness, she's interior design, so that makes sense, right? She likes fabric. Anyways, so if you really like go all the way back and we talk about purple as a color, because we were talking about how much we like purple. Yes. So basically what the deal is that the more difficult it is to get the color, then the more expensive it was to produce. And so therefore it was viewed as a more royal or whatever color. And so when it comes to purple, that's exactly what happened, is that in order to dye that kind of shade for, let's say, garments or things like that was very expensive. And so royalty is really the only people who could like afford that. And so that's where like that kind of tie in.
Okay. That's interesting. I don't know, man. It's like purple's always kind of been my favorite color for whatever reason. Maybe I was royalty in a past life or something. I don't know.
I don't know. It's always been my favorite color too. And it's super funny because my mom never really decorated it much, like with that color much, like as, you know, as far as all her clients go, except she did a whole house where the lady's favorite color was purple, and it really changed her mind. And I was like, see, isn't my favorite color awesome?
Yeah.
We're joking about how I talk about all the time my 800 purple cups. So Cody's got 1 cup. I've got like 40. Here's all my cups. You can look behind me. I have more cups. It's fine. I might have a cup problem, but it's fine.
It's crazy. It's crazy, man, because we definitely don't live in a simulation, okay? But the theme of Riverside is like purple. Like the little outline. True. The little outline of our things. You can't see this on the edited video.
When you talk it goes purple around the edge. Yeah. Exactly.
The theme is like, it's like black and purple. Like if you look over to the side, I don't know what you can see on your side, but like all the things on the side are purple. The thing that says uploading is purple. Like everything's purple up here.
I know. It's crazy. Well, and it's funny too, like the whole reason that I use purple in my businesses is like, it actually does have a lot of symbolism with money, right? So I deal with all these things in the financial space. So that's one aspect. And then the other aspect is that when we decided to be PBJ Mortgage, making mortgage simple with symbols, make it peanut butter jelly sandwich, we originally actually were going to be navy, but I was like, this is a missed opportunity, right? Like purple jelly, grape jelly. And so we went purple.
Yeah. Well, good decision. So you talking about like, you were talking about dyes earlier. Have you heard about methylene blue?
So yes, but I don't necessarily know the context in which I've heard about it. So you could probably refresh my memory, and then it'll start rolling back.
So methylene blue was like literally a fabric dye that they were using to dye fabrics. But now there's a thing going around where people are taking it as a supplement, like literally as a supplement. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, that's why. Because I was like, I was thinking to myself, isn't it like a drug or something? But,
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But it started out as a industrial fabric dye. So I've never taken it, and I would tell people to be careful taking it. I'm not sure about that, but it's supposed to have like really great health benefits. People put a couple drops in like a bottle of water or whatever, and anyway, but it's crazy that started out as first of all, anything that says methylene in it, like I want to be very careful with that. Like, but I say that, but then there's also there's methylated vitamins, which are like easier for a lot of people to absorb, and so it's not necessarily, but I'm just saying it started out as an industrial fabric dye. So
I was gonna say, anytime it's that, I don't know, when it's that far derived from natural anything, I'm like, I don't know about that. But hey, to each their own. I'm not here to judge like all the kinds of things that everybody else does. So, you know,
I mean, it's probably not worse than some of the things that are in the food to begin with. Like we have a lot of dyes, and I've told this story on the podcast before, so people that have heard this, I'm sorry, but there was a study at the University of Dallas, Texas, that did I guess an experiment with, it was yellow dye, and it made the skin of mice temporarily transparent. And that's
crazy.
Yeah,
By the way, I'm in Dallas. But that's so crazy. Like So here's the funny thing, and the thing that I will say is that I'm actually a little bit glad that we're having a little bit of an overhaul of like some of the FDA stuff
Yep.
because the truth is, um, our bodies, like if you really start digging like really deep, because even though I work in finance, I'm a nerd and I love information. And so
Mhm.
whenever I go down a path and I'm starting to learn about stuff, I'm ADHD, so I like nerd out and like laser focus in and like read and go down all kinds of paths, ask all kinds of questions or whatever. Like I'm literally writing a book called Ask the Question because intellectual curiosity is such a huge topic for me. I just really like that. And so anyhow, I started going on these paths, and what you start realizing is part of the reason that we're having an obesity problem is because of the amount of things in our food,
Yep.
uh, specifically just the amount of preservatives. Because what most people don't realize is the liver's function is several fold. So it's like number one, the liver is supposed to get rid of toxins. So that's number one. And
Hmm.
so if you have all of these things and the body is considering toxins, so maybe the FDA doesn't consider that toxin, but the body says this is not a natural thing. This is a toxin. So it's spending all this time getting rid of it. The other job of the liver is to process fat.
Yep.
However, if the liver is always processing what it considers toxins, which is all this processed crap, do you think it's ever going to have the opportunity to process fat? So then what's
Right.
going to happen? You're either going to have to work it off, right? And you're a fitness person, so that's like one choice. Or the second choice is the body's going to store it.
Mm.
And we know more than anybody that we live in the most sedimentary, you know, society that we've been in for decades. And that's because we all do so much desk jobs. I mean, think about 2020. Who really did a lot of like getting up? I mean, I throw myself under the bus all the time because I'm very sedimentary. I sit all the time. My watch is like, good job, Jax, you stood up. I'm like, shut up, watch, shut up.
Yeah. I mean, no, you have a point though. You do have a point because like, but here's the thing. We being America are like so we have the ability to not have all this shit that we have in the
Mhm.
food if we really wanted to. Because
Absolutely.
like we go to these other countries, man, and these other countries in Europe or wherever, they don't have all these ingredients that we have.
They
And so
don't.
we should not have I keep referring to this statistic on the podcast because it is absolutely just atrocious that like 40% of American children are considered obese, whatever obese is. That is insane, man.
Yeah, that's
That is
nuts.
insane.
Well,
Like,
and we're really we're setting them up for like for failure because your health, to your point on some of the things that you and I have had conversations about previously, your health and your finances are integrally linked. Like
right.
way more than people believe that because if you're constantly in, a negative state, like if you're putting your body through stress and whatever else, do you really think you're going to be able to make great choices about money to be intentional in the way you want to be intentional? And like one thing that I learned, so I like to travel and I've been to like 27 different countries. I've been to all 50 states. I've been to like 27 different countries. And we traveled, my mom and one of my daughters and I went to France and we took this high level cooking class with this guy. And this guy was like amazing. Like he was like a Michelin star chef at one point, and then he even taught at like Le Cordon Bleu in France. Like this is like the upper echelon of chefs. And when he retired, he did these cooking classes out of his house, right, to like kind of make some money. I learned more in that one cooking class about ingredients, like how you should literally never salt your food until the end because it
Mm,
dehydrates your food. That salt elevates flavor, and so it should only ever be put on at the like last second. But think about it. How often do you cook and you're like putting salt on the whole time, and all you're doing is just dehydrating that food, pulling the water content from it? And he was like, "You don't
makes
need to do
sense.
that." And I was like, "Oh, cool." Like, you know what I mean? And you just don't even think about it because you're so used to doing it a certain way. Like it's just
Mm,
it's totally crazy to me.
yeah.
If you just start peeling back the layers, it's crazy.
Well, I definitely want to keep going with this, but before we do that, can you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, and then because I want to give you a chance to do that because I'll keep going, man. Like I'll go.
Yeah, it's fine. I am Jax Crider. I actually my background is in finance, so I have a little bit of an interesting path. I'll be very brief on it, but I was really always good at math. I was a mechanical engineering major, but I hated the fact that it didn't intersect with people. So I ended up changing, and I went all the way to creative writing English, and then I ended up working in mortgage. Wait, what? Yes. And then when the crash started happening, I actually went and I got a law degree because I really do, like I said, I'm a nerd and I like to understand how things work. And I want to understand how that was going to intersect with my industry and my business and things like that. And so, and then I've never really liked following anyone else's rules. So in 2020, I decided to go out on my own in the mortgage space and I started my own business. And then come 2020, I think it was 2 or 3, I can't remember, but then I started a secondary business that deals also with money and kind of more like coaching and courses and things like that. So I am the ultimate nerd, which is why I can answer lots of questions about seemingly unrelated things because I firmly believe to my core that things are all interconnected, whether it be people, information, and the bigger and broader understanding you have of that and the more curiosity you have surrounding it, the better educated you can be and the better life you can live.
Okay. So did you have a law degree and then just transition to mortgages?
No. So I worked in mortgage. So I actually ended up in mortgage on accident. I actually worked in mortgage in college. I needed a job. I was good at math. And my youth pastor's wife said, "Why don't you come work for a mortgage company?" I said, "Cool." And so I started there. And then when I got out of school, I worked very briefly at Geico doing property and casualty insurance. And then I rolled into mortgage. And I actually worked full time the entire time I was in law school. I did 2.5 hours a round trip commute between work, home, and school. And I worked full time and I went to night law school and I did about 12 hours of class-ish for about 4 years. So when people talk about wherewithal,
crazy.
like I used to get that question on interviews. I don't know, do you have basically the stones to do this job? I'm like, yes. In more ways than you know, I am a very driven person. I think we have that in common.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's crazy, man. That is insane. Because law school is not like an easy thing. And I don't imagine mortgages are easy.
They're not. But law school for me was easier than regular school, actually, like a university, because for 2 reasons. Number one, the best way I can describe law school is that they take the whole first year, they take your entire brain out and reshuffle the way you think. And you will never go back to thinking about things the way ever again. And it's very critical thinking based, which is what I feel like is missing from regular education. Like literally everybody thought I was going to be a teacher. Everyone. And I considered at one point being a professor because I do genuinely like learning. I like teaching. Like that's something that I've always been passionate about. But I don't like, here's the book, memorize this information, regurgitate it to me. Like that isn't a true understanding that you actually understood. It means that you can memorize something and quote it back to me. That's not the same as understanding it. And so in law school, it's about application. So here's the law, these are the premises. Here's the fact pattern of the things that happened. Can you apply this? And so for me, law school was easier because that is how my brain naturally thinks. My brain naturally is taking down information and figuring out how it plugs into real life, as opposed to, great, I have to memorize this information and just spit it back out at you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does make sense.
It's actually also where they found out I was ADHD. Why? Because guess what? I never knew, because I genuinely like information until I went into constitutional law. I could not care less. I could not care less. So for the first time ever, I was like reading pages and books and I was like, I just read this page 14 times. I have no idea what it said. I have no idea.
Yeah, that's actually a point that I was going to make. If I feel like with like a law degree or just a legal job, there's like a lot of things you have to know. Like you just have to know a lot of things, I feel like. But
yeah, I mean, I think also law school naturally made a lot of sense to me because lawyers in general, like that field, for people who don't understand really why law is so different, it's not only just critical thinking, you also have to go and do a lot of research. Like you have to research not only what the law is, because it changes all the time, and then also what the cases have come out, because that is what helps you sort of build the ability to represent and bring forward your case. And again, my brain naturally does that. Maybe it's because I've been arguing with my parents and trying to convince them of my way since I was like 3. I don't know. But so for me, like that just makes natural sense. And so I think for me, law school was easier than a lot of people, just because again, the natural way that my brain is bent.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think I think you have a way to explain things and like get your point across, and I think that's probably obviously very important. I was thinking you mentioned about like arguing with your parents or whatever. Somebody told me one time that I missed my calling as a politician, and I don't know how I take that, man. Like I don't know how to I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because like I would have much rather heard like attorney or something, because I feel like I can formulate an argument or something like that. But like, what did this now? Like this really makes me think. What did this person mean?
But
I missed.
most politicians, if you really understand, most of them are attorneys because they understand like the background of legal, whatever. And in order to be able to really navigate and like, if you ever watch, like, I don't know, for some odd reason, I was up last night. I guess because my sinus crap, I couldn't sleep well.
Mm,
And I was like, went down a whole thing on TikTok of all of these politicians, because of course that's a big deal right now. And they're all like arguing with each other. And it's so funny because since I've been to law school, I could see the formal training. Like I could
mm,
see them trying to formulate in their head the little
yeah.
argument and then like trying to spit them back out, but do it really quickly, which is truly an art form. But so that maybe that's what they were saying, is that you could formulate
Well,
arguments really quickly and spit them out.
I was kind of like, I wouldn't say necessarily an argument, but like more like in a debate. I was in a debate with this person. So whatever that context means, I don't know. That's what they, that's what it was. But I was like, I don't know, dude. When I think a politician, like, I don't think of somebody that I would really want to be.
Well, I know. I think it's really interesting. I mean, the more like if you people who've actually gone and have the formal training of like law degrees and lawyers and things like that, it's very interesting to kind of understand some of that formula. Like my husband is a very brilliant person. Okay, he's really really freaking smart, actually like way smarter than me. But he and I will get in arguments because he's like, well, that's not how it is. And I'm like, actually, you're wrong. Let me explain. And I'm like, it's not because I don't agree with you. I do agree with you, but the way that our legal system is structured and set up, and that's where a lot of people miss the boat, is that
Mm,
they want to be so right. And it's not that their opinions aren't valid, it's that in the context of the structure of how the container of how we have our legal system set up, it's not what you think. And so
right.
you're making an argument that's valid, granted, but in the container of how we do things, it doesn't operate.
Mm,
Like, do you know, and I'll just give you this example because it's like one of the easiest ones that I could think of is remember the whole argument with the guy who got deported, and like everybody was like losing their minds because they took this guy and they deported him back to El Salvador or whatever. Okay. The guy made the point and he was like bringing up to the reporters. He was like, hey, did anybody do any deep dive into the law surrounding the deportation? Because what the people are saying, and whether you agree with them or not, is irrelevant. Okay, that's not the
mhm,
point of this example.
right.
They were saying he should be back with his family. His family's in the U.S. He now has been deported to El Salvador. He should be back with his family. But what the guy was saying is remember that the law, so he had a deportation order issued, and
Hmm.
the law says that granted, even if you bring him back, that still stands. And so because it still stands, even if he were to come back, we still would have to deport him. Like that doesn't change that law. Does that make sense? Like you would
Right.
literally have to change the law, which is, by the way, it takes a while to do that. Like it's not going to change overnight or whatever. And so
Hmm.
so many people in their brain, they're like, oh, but this is this wrong that we need to right. But the way that the law is written, that can't even happen. So you're like making an argument that on its face sounds like it makes sense.
Right.
But the reality is that the container cannot hold it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. This is exactly my point. You had to know a bunch of things to like be to be in law. Um, okay, so you mentioned mortgage. Did
Mhm.
you were in mortgages like during COVID? Was that right?
Oh, baby, I was in mortgages. I worked at the subprime company. When subprime melted down, I was working for the company that basically is the reason that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac started buying subprime loans. Okay.
Okay.
And then when they started melting down, I moved and started working at Countrywide, which is where prime mortgages melted down. And then after that whole debacle, we moved into 2020. I actually started my mortgage company about a week before the shutdown. So that was super fun.
Oh yeah, I bet.
And then wrote all of that. Like, so when people
Well,
are like, "Oh my gosh, you've been in mortgage for a minute." I'm like, "Oh yeah, baby, just a few minutes."
well, I was going to ask, what was it like working in mortgages during COVID? But it sounds like you were maybe kind of prepped for this before you got there with all this other stuff.
Yeah, so COVID actually, what sucked about it is that so first of all, we were essential workers.
Mm,
So the beautiful part about that was meant that we were not trapped in our homes. And first of all, I live in Texas. And so Texas was like on the forefront of like, we're not keeping people locked in our houses. Like,
right.
we were literally
Props
like
to
out
Texas.
eating at restaurants like a month and a half after the whole shutdown started. Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very on that. But we were allowed to like go to work and like go to physical places and stuff like that because we were considered essential workers.
Yep.
And not only that, but it was nuts. Like we were working all the time because people were trapped in their houses. And so guess what? You're trapped in your house for a while. It makes you realize one of two things. One, you don't like your house because you're now
Mm,
there all the time and you have a very clear picture of what you do and do not like about it. Or two, you want to improve your house. You want to like make some of the things that maybe you've never gotten around to because you've never had the time. Like we want to make them better. And so everybody and their brother was either buying a house, selling a house, or redoing their house. And so they needed like money, right? So refinancing and stuff like that. And so it was crazy. Like it was pandemonium. So when everybody else was like bored and getting laid off and all the things, we were literally working like 60, 80 hours a week. It was crazy.
mm, yeah. Yeah, I can imagine, man. First of all, props to Texas for how they handled that. In South Carolina, man, I think we could have done it. It wasn't like super bad, but it definitely could have been worse. North Carolina was absolutely insane the way they. I mean, those are two different states, so we're talking about apples and oranges. There was actually I dated a girl during COVID, and they had a curfew. They had to be back at their house by like 10 p.m. or 9 p.m. or whatever it was, and I was like, bro. Anyway, um,
I was gonna say, speaking of the legal aspect, so when COVID started happening, nobody could understand why I was legitimately flipping my freaking lid. And they're like, I don't understand. It's just we're trying to flatten the curve. I'm like, I don't think you guys understand. This is not about health for a minute, okay?
mm,
I need you to step back and see the slippery slope. You're basically giving the federal government license to lock you into your home for
yep,
any reason. I
yep,
was like, this is not a good idea. Okay.
yep,
And they were like, you don't care about people. I was like, no, no, no. I do care about people. Okay. And so if a lot of people want to stay in their homes, I don't have a problem with that. Right. Like,
mm,
again, we live in a free society. You do whatever you want. I have no problem with that. But I do not like people abusing powers. And I know that unfortunately politicians, regardless of which side of the fence they're on, have a tendency to do this. And now you've given them license to lock you in your home. That's not a good
yeah.
plan, just so we're clear.
Well, I know that a lot of people were like influenced by fear, and I get
Of
that.
course.
And a lot of people lost people, and I get that also.
Absolutely.
However, a lot of people lost businesses and lost things because they could not leave their house. A lot of people lost people, but not because of COVID, because people got the vaccine and these people were 80, 85 plus years old. And
Sure.
who knows? We can't say that that's what made it happen. We don't know, but it seems like a pretty obvious thing that a person who's generally healthy gets this a couple months later, they're no longer here. Like what's the common denominator here? So I try to be like empathetic, man, to both sides, but like fundamentally what it comes down to is you're exactly right. We gave that power up for that time period, and it's like now, like if that were to ever happen again, it would have to be a different thing. But if we were ever in that situation where had to submit that power, and I think submit's a really good word, if we had to submit that power to the federal government, what would happen? Like I don't know, man. I mean,
Well, think about how people would feel right now because a lot of people don't like who is currently in power, and whether you like him or not, okay, that's again irrelevant. How many people would be flipping their lid if he made like an order for everybody to get locked into their homes right you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like people will be losing their minds that he's a tyrant and all these other things and whatever. And the truth is, no matter whether it's him or anyone else, abuse of power is a real thing. It is
yep,
100% a real thing. It's why we have the legal system that we have, right? Whether you love it or hate it, it's irrelevant. That doesn't matter. It is created to try to avoid abuse of power as much as possible.
Yep.
And unfortunately, look, there's always going to be abuse of power. We're humans and we're imperfect, and there's always going to be bad apples. It doesn't really matter, right? I mean, that's just reality, unfortunately. And so I think a lot of people sometimes they play out all these things in this perfect world, and we just don't live in that world. There is no such thing as a perfect world, right? So you have to be a little bit of a realist, and you have to really dig in and whatnot. And um, it it makes me sad a lot of times how brainwashed people can be, and this is why I'm so all for independent and free thought, and why I make
Yeah.
my own podcast and things like that, because I want people to be able to dig deep. I want them to be able to ask questions, because you and I don't have to agree. We can literally agree on nothing. We cannot
Right.
agree on religion, politics, I don't know, whatever the hell you want to throw out there, right? We can literally
Yep.
agree on nothing, but we still should be able to have an intelligent conversation, arguing our different sides and our different points, and be able to articulate those appropriately without being like, well, I don't like what you said. Like, are we 3? Like, are we my
Right.
toddler? Like, that's no.
Right. Yeah, but see, like, and that's a really good point. And this is my thing about this, man. And I don't know why people can't really understand this. If you say to me right now, Cody, your watch is white. Okay, well, this is clearly black. Like, it's not white. Okay, and then if you come to me and say, like your you can't really see this because it's kind of inverted, but your sleeve is on your left arm instead of your right arm. Well, it's clearly my right. So if you're going to lie to me about things and then you come along and you tell me something else, I'm going to say, well, I don't know. She's just kind of lied to me in the past. I don't know. But like when it comes to the federal government, people will just like take things as they say it. And like, here's the thing. You can not like Trump, or you can like Trump or whatever. My mind was made up from this before this because I saw just how things were. But when the entire system, legal system, financial system, I would say social media, the censorship machine, all these things were used against a person. And then when all of that failed, an assassination attempt on this person. Like when I see all these things towards a person who's trying to make changes, that tells me like what, and the problem is the people who are saying these things, the systemic people, are the very same people who have lied to us about things in the past. So it's like, look, I get it. Does he make an ass of himself? Is he like whatever? Okay, I understand like why people say all those things. But at the same time though, people are like, dude, people are craving that authentic leadership. People are like, we are so over seeing politicians that we see one side of. It's like this perfect dressed up person, and we see them for like 15 minutes on an hour-long news show or whatever it is. Like people are just craving that authenticity. This is why podcasts are so popular right now. This is why Joe Rogan can have people come on his show and get billions of downloads a year, because they just it's open. It's an open thing. Like we're craving that connection.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily to these people, but like we want to see that these are real people.
Absolutely.
And so, like,
well, people, it's so funny to me. Like I've said forever, and to be real with you, I don't really like either side. Mainly because I went to law school and I understand how they think, and I understand how a lot of this stuff operates, and a lot of what's happening right now where we're ripping back and we're seeing all the fraud and the money and whatever. It's why I'm very fiscally conservative, because if you were taking my money and actually doing something good with it, and I could actually like see it going to people in need, that would be different.
right.
When I'm basically seeing my money get pulled from me, and then it's really just going to pad pockets of people who don't need, like, no, like absolutely not.
Like, let's be so for real. If this was a private company who was going through this, I guess, audit, and they were finding these things being spent in different areas, whatever, that's obviously fraud. That's like not good. That's like laundering. That's like
It's
money
also
laundering.
embezzlement. Like,
Yes,
1000%.
that's exactly
like,
what it is.
Yeah, they would be all thrown in jail and spend a very, very long. I mean, the things that people have put up with is crazy to me.
Yeah.
I just can't understand from a very logical perspective how you can feel like that is for the greater good. I mean, I'll never forget, and I taught my girls, and my girls. So I have 4 daughters. Okay, 3 are adults and then I have a toddler. And my 3 adults is I was like, look, I know, especially when you're younger, we're probably not going to have same viewpoint politically eye to eye. That's fine. Doesn't bother me. We will, one, always be able to have an intelligent conversation about things. Number one. Number two, you will not have a viewpoint that's not your own. If you tell me you believe something and you cannot back it with something, some reason, whether it be fact, whether it be like whatever it is, like it can't just be, well, somebody else told me to feel that way. Absolutely not. I need you to hold true to whatever the standard is or whatever, however you feel. I need that from you. I need to see you having a reason for your viewpoints. As long as you have a reason, a stand. I mean, one of my literal best friends, like she and I are on wildly opposite political viewpoints.
Right.
She and I can have a very intelligent conversation. We can agree to disagree or whatever. It's like my husband, I had to tell him a couple of election cycles ago, I don't know, 3 or 4. I was like, dude, don't bother. I don't know why everybody goes out to social media and drops their opinion out there, believing it's going to change everyone's mind.
Yeah.
When was the last time you watched a video on social media and you were like, oh my gosh, exactly. Cody, my whole opinion of everything just changed. Like, I'm not saying that's not going to like affect it a little bit, but like a real conversation with somebody is going to potentially affect change. Not you just like dropping your opinion on the internet and expecting a bunch of people who don't even know you to value it.
Well, you know, what's crazy is like, I don't think we should do that at all. I think that whatever the opposing view is, I think we should try to force ourselves to believe that view, because I talk a lot about this, man, like the beliefs that you have. How do you even really know you have a belief if you've never tested that belief? If it's just a belief that you have because either your friends gave it to you or your parents or whatever, and you just have this belief, is it technically a belief if you've never went to the other side and say, okay, well, this is what I believe, but what if this?
Absolutely.
You know, like, I don't know, like unless you can test your belief that way, I don't think you can say that you have a belief. Like you have to be able to go out and like explore these other possibilities.
And that's why they thought that you should be a politician. Actually, really, you should have been a lawyer because you want to test both sides and you want to understand so you can position yourself, because that's literally what a lawyer does, right? Is like you have to understand both sides. And that's, again, for me, where the intellectual curiosity comes in. Because I also told my girls that. I was like, I don't want you to believe something just because I told you to either, right? Whether it be religion, politics, it doesn't matter. Like you need to know. Because again, this goes back to some of our earlier conversations about self-confidence. Self-confidence comes from where, right? It comes from knowing yourself. It comes from being sure in your ideas and your thought processes. You cannot be sure in those unless those are tested. So if you just live in a bubble where everything is like every friend you have, every person you interact with, every conversation, everything you watch, it's all in the same frame of mind, the same exact viewpoint, the same exact everything, you are never going to grow. You are never going to test your belief system. You are never going to do anything of real consequence. I'm sorry, but it's just the truth. Like there's no meat there. There's nothing going on in between your ears when that same drivel is just coming across.
Right. Exactly. And I think, you know, I don't know the quote exactly, but it's a pretty like significant sign of intelligence to be able to look at both sides of a thing like that, because like I just feel like if you perpetuate whatever it is that you already believe or know or think, like what is it that do you learn anything that way?
Well, remind yourself, and I've said this for a while, that I feel like a lot of people, it's way easier to control people if they have like a very narrow focus and mindset as opposed to a very broad mindset. Because my attitude is like I said, I don't really care what path you walk down, truthfully, right? I mean, part of the reason I expanded in my business is because I realized like literally there's an episode of my podcast with a woman, and she literally never wants to own a home. She's a financial coach, okay? And I'll never forget hers and my very first conversation. So we're in this conversation, and as you could tell, I'm a pretty direct person. And I was very appreciative of her directness back to me. And, so what exactly are you trying to get out of this conversation? And I was like, okay. And I said, I said, why do you say that? She's like, well, I don't feel like we're very aligned. Okay, I said, that's fair. I said, why do you feel that way? Right? I'm trying to understand. I want to understand. And she's like, well, you believe that owning a home is the only way, and I don't believe that. I said, no, you're wrong. I don't believe that owning a home is the only way.
Wait a minute. The only way for what?
Financial success.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And I said, I do think it is one of the biggest indicators of financial success. I do. And statistics backs me on that. The math backs me. I said, however, I don't think that that's the path for everybody. And I said, why do you not believe that, it's important or whatever to own a home? And she has a very specific personal story of why she doesn't believe that. And I said, okay, cool. No problem. It doesn't bother me that you don't want to own a home. Let me ask you a question. Do you have a plan in place to ensure your financial success? Yes, I do. And she gave me her things that she did. Okay, great. So you have been what is important to me, which is intentionality, right? For how that looks. Do I think that everybody needs to own a home? No. Do I think that most people have not only the desire to have a home, but it will also help them with their financial success? Absolutely, which is why it is so important for me to do that job. However, if that's not your path, that's okay by me. As long as you got to where you're going intentionally and knowingly and you made that decision, we're cool. That's fine by me. We don't have to have the same opinion.
And what was her final response to this?
And she was like, okay, well, I guess we are aligned. And then she and I ended up doing a podcast together. And she actually refers people to me doing mortgage because she also recognizes that for most people, that is something that's really important to a lot of them. Right. And so again, this is where I feel like you have to know yourself and not be afraid to speak your mind to people.
Right.
But you have to do it in such a way where it can be a conversation, and it has to be there has to be a curiosity there. The curiosity is not only what deepens a relationship, but it deepens your understanding, right? It allows you, like you call yourself the Pure Wisdom Podcast, right? Pure wisdom comes from depth. It comes from not just staying here, right? Like some of the coolest and most unique conversations I have ever had with people have come because I'm not afraid to not only ask questions of them that I want to know, but also be willing to stretch my viewpoint. Okay, so I saw it this way, and this other person sees it that way. Why did they see it that way?
Right.
Why does that look different than my way? Right? Like, what is their perspective? And I encourage as many different kinds of people and experiences and backgrounds on my podcast as possible because one, not only does it help reach other people that maybe I couldn't necessarily reach on my own, but also two, it helps those perspectives change and shape how I am interacting with others. And in my mind, that's a definition of growth.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, no, for sure. And a really good point about this, man, is like I think why people get so defensive about these beliefs, whether it's political or financial or, if pineapple goes on pizza or whatever it is, like whatever the belief that people have, the reason that if it gets tested, that they get defensive is because they have literally their identity is attached to this thing, like who they see themselves as is like this thing, and you see that a lot with politics. You see that a lot, like with the politicals, like person says, I am, like you even hear people say it, I am a conservative. Like, well, you have those views, you have those beliefs, but like, is that why are you saying I am? Because listen, whatever follows I am is like critical. We had to be careful with what follows I am.
Oh yeah. Your brain is looking out for I am.
So, but it's like, but these people, it's like they see this as their identity. And if you come along or I come along or somebody comes along to like, not necessarily challenge that, but present us something else on that could be an alternative to that. It's like this, their identity, it's almost like it fractionates and breaks down. And that's obviously, we don't want to have an identity crisis.
Have you ever read the 5 levels of attachment?
No.
So there's a father and son. They each wrote a book. One is called The 4 Agreements, and one is called The 5 Levels of Attachment.
I've read The 4 Agreements.
Okay. So his son wrote a book called The 5 Levels of Attachment, and they talk about the 5 different levels of attachment to ideas. And it's really life altering when you read that book, because what you start realizing and recognizing about people is just that. They basically are taking these things that aren't even as integral as they believe that they are, right? And they're attaching them so interlinked to their identity, to their personality, to whatever. that it literally, like, potentially can negatively affect, like, the rest of their life.
Mm.
And, it's a very interesting concept, and it made me a lot more self-aware of some of my own, like, potential attachments and how
Right.
a lot of them were unhealthy and how I needed to adjust, right? And so it's definitely one of those things that you have to realize is that, um you can definitely attach yourself to some really, negative things and whatever. Like, I actually try not to watch the news a whole lot or a lot of like these kind of negative spends because, again, to your point of saying I am, the subconscious mind is literally looking
Mm.
for the I am statements or whatever. And they're also looking at all of the different things that you're feeding it. So I'm not telling you not to be informed about situations or things or whatever, but you have to be very careful when you start traveling down a path that is just purely negative, right? Purely things that are just going to fuel because we know that the media and a lot of these things, like think about how many times people do stuff for crazy views, right?
Yeah.
Like you just got to be really careful, man. I mean, it can really make or break a lot of things.
Well, it can, but like also too, whatever you see yourself as or possible for yourself or whatever it is, whatever it is, these things limit and literally can alter the direction of your life. I mean, just like money is a very good example to bring this in because it's like people think whether it's generationally or whatever, from cycles before them, or because somebody told them this, or they just don't simply understand it, or they never experienced it, that they are supposed to be broke or money's not for them, or if somebody this one kills me. If somebody's wealthy, they hurt somebody or stepped over somebody to get there. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
and when I hear that belief, it's like if I hear somebody say, "Oh, that person has money, they must have cheated somebody to get there." Well, the person that's saying that clearly they don't know this, but they subconsciously have they're like they're
Bias.
pushing money away from themselves because they have a negative connotation with money. And so
Mhm.
that person's never going to experience financial wealth the way they want to because they see financial wealth as a bad thing. And they
Yep.
don't want to or they see that if you get money, quote unquote, you're a bad person, and they don't want to be a bad person, so they're going to sabotage any chance they have to make good money for themselves because they don't want to be that person. And it's
Yep.
like, listen, people make money by cheating people. I get all that. I understand all that, but
Absolutely.
like probably on the average everyday person, those people don't have that money for long if they cheated somebody to get it. You know, I mean, we could talk about like corruption in the government, all this kind of stuff. That's a little bit different story. But like the average everyday people, I feel like if they did cheat somebody or stole something or scam something, I mean, one of two things: they're not going to have it long, or they're going to be bouncing around from city to city, town to town, industry to industry. Because once you get a reputation like that, man, you're not. I mean, you're out.
Oh yeah. Oh no, karma is definitely a real thing. What goes around comes around, like that energy that you're placing out into the world. Um, Scarcity mentality, it is well, and negative things. And the crazy part is that a lot of times we don't even recognize and realizing we're doing it. Like
Yep.
as I really went down the path to start creating courses and financial coaching program to basically try to help people start uncovering some of these things because what I didn't really realize is a lot of it I did through a lot of the books that I was reading and the different coaching things that I didn't kind of do it intentionally, if that makes sense. Like it was
Mm,
sort of an unintended thing. And so then I had to really dig in because again,
right.
I'm the nerd, like of like, okay, what was actually happening and what did I actually do to like pull back some of this? And as I sort of did some of those things, I started realizing that it is super prevalent. I mean, I grew up very middle class. I grew up in a family where money definitely wasn't like a huge problem or issue, right? So to speak. But even myself, who has a very abundant mindset, I found myself saying to my nephew, I don't even know how long ago, money doesn't grow on trees. Like I heard it come out of my mouth.
Yeah.
I am very self-aware. I stopped it and I was like, oh crap, right? Because that's not true. Like money is literally a resource. Like I saw a meme the other day that said, the universe is not on a budget. Ask for what you want because money
Mm,
is in abundant supply, right? Like we literally can just print as much of it as possible. And so a lot of these thought process, right? Or like believing that money is a root of all evil or like taking some of these things and and putting that into our brains, like, it's super unnecessary, but it's because of generational patterns, and you do have to go and kind of reboot, just like you do a computer. You have to reboot it. It's one of the biggest things we do in our program is try to figure out, what are your blocks? Like, what is holding you back?
Yep.
Because one of the things that I do not believe that anybody does well in the financial space is like the big wigs, right? The Suze Ormans and the Dave Ramseys of the world. I think that they're great on their face, okay? Their concepts of our money are solid, so I'm not knocking that, right? Because the math is the math, and a lot of their tactics work. The problem is, if you never deal with the root cause of what created the problem, you likely are never going to actually solve the problem.
Right.
It's going to be a continuous cycle of, like you said, self-sabotage, whatever it is, right? Until they either do it enough times that hopefully enough shifts in here, or they figure out that they do need a shift in here, and then, okay, we're going to go down that path.
Yeah. Yeah, I always sort of portray that message with like a tree. Like, you can cut branches off of a tree, or you can just cut the tree down, you know? And
of course
dude,
you're a landscaper.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, man, you're gonna really experience a lot of stress if you're just trying to put band-aids on that thing. And another $100, another $1,000, another $5,000 is another temporary band-aid or whatever it is, until that money runs out. Then you're like in the same place. But like, yeah. And this is why, like I mentioned to you earlier, I think most financially wealthy people have there's obviously the healthy mindset of money, but there's also that sort of connection with who they are themselves, their physical body, their mental and spiritual body. Like, all these things are connected, man. You have to have that. You mentioned earlier scarcity mindset. And then we mentioned the sort of the sabotage. I think that happens way more often than we think. And it happens in ways, by saying that money is bad, or people, cheated somebody to get there, or there's not enough of it. You mentioned the scarcity thing. I wanted to say this. This is actually insane. It's actually insane that, like, I think it's 93% of the world's money is digital. So, like,
yeah.
So the money that you think is real is not even technically real. It's on a screen somewhere. If I hire you for your coaching, or you hire me for my coaching, vice versa, what's gonna happen is the money's gonna move from one account to another account through a digital screen. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Even if somebody writes you a check, unless you actually cash the check, you go deposit it into your account. It's a piece of paper that has an amount on it. You take it to the bank puts that number on the screen. It's just crazy, man. Like, to say that, I guess I kind of understand the scarcity mindset, because technically 93% of it doesn't exist, or whatever it is. But it's also too, man, it's like, it's not even about like what is there. It's like the potential. I feel like it's the potential of what could be made, and I'm pretty sure you hear that, like, money is printed every day. Like, they print money every day. I don't know what I don't know the mechanics of, like, when a dollar is recycled. Like, I imagine a dollar bill is only in circulation for so long until it has to be it's just damaged to the point where you can't use it again. It
has to do with the way, like, the way that the currency, so they technically don't always take them out of circulation unless they're to a level. There is like a specific, like, I don't remember. I at one point did nerd out on that because we went to visit like the treasury, like where they were printing money or something, and I learned a bunch of things, but I've purged some of that out of my brain at this point. But there is some of those things, but you're right. I mean, most of it is fictional, and it's funny because I think so many people, we really tie self-worth to so many arbitrary things like money. If you really think about, I don't even roll back even like 300-400 years, that didn't even really, like, money really wasn't even like a thing, right? It was barter, and it was trade, and it was this, and it was that. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So we are arbitrary giving things value. I mean, it's literally no different than, we can use the example of brands, how brands put value on things, right, that intrinsically don't have as much value without the brand. I mean, a perfect example is a pair of sneakers, right?
Yep.
So you could absolutely go right now and buy a perfectly decent pair of sneakers at Walmart, Target, whatever your favorite, budget retailer is. Okay. However, why do you want to buy Nike or Adidas or name one of the other giant brands, right? Now, yes, they probably build a better quality shoe, right? However, the function is the same. And you know what I mean? But that brand has built in you a perception. I mean, this is how powerful, and this is why I firmly believe that people can do whatever they want, because this is literally all in your brain. It is all right here in your brain and in your nervous system. Like, that is literally built in there. You are making some of those decisions. I mean, I was reading last night, so I'm in all these different groups all over Facebook because I give advice and like moms groups and things like that, because I firmly just like genuinely like to help people. And this woman was saying, I don't know what to do. She's like, I spend and I spend and I spend. The second that I get my paycheck, it all just leaves and I don't know what to do. And a lot of these women are, of course, trying to say like, oh, cut up the credit cards. And they're trying to get all these things. And I'm like, guys, if you're not dealing with whatever's going on mentally and emotionally, like inside this woman, it doesn't matter. It's not going to change. None of that is going to change, right? Like, this is something going on in here that you have to learn to reset to be able to succeed in another way.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. I mean, I think that's, again, if we just go around fixing the symptoms of the problem's still going to be there.
Exactly.
all these, I mean, and fitness too. In fitness, there's the same thing applies to fitness, because if you go to the gym to be fit, to be healthy, that's obviously a good thing. But if you're going there because, you're trying to be something you're not, or chase something you're not, or you see the guys who go like way overboard. I mean, look, I'm a fitness advocate and I always will be, but like, if you're in there 3 hours a day and you're destroying your health, at a certain point, it's like counterproductive. At a certain point, you're moving backwards instead of towards the goal that you. So this is like a lesson that literally applies to every area of life. If and this goes down, we don't have time to get into this, but this goes to like why, the purpose, like what are you doing? Why are you doing the thing? Which I'm huge on. I'm huge on purpose. I can't believe I haven't mentioned it on this podcast actually, but we've been talking for a while, man. People don't know. I actually did a podcast with you before this, and we've been talking for about 2.5 hours, and it's been like nonstop. Like, we didn't have any gaps or anything. So,
oh man, I always joke when people want to come on my podcast. They're like, I don't know what to say. I've never been on a podcast. I'm like, look, just so we're clear, I could talk to a stump for like a whole long period of time. So you're going to be fine. Like, I will ask you questions. I will get whatever out of you. If you don't have anything to say, I promise we'll be fine. Just because, like I said, I think, and it's interesting. I don't know how much you've ever delved or understand. You know what human design is?
Is like this, probably not in this context, no.
So human design is like this very fascinating thing that it's sort of like astrology, but on steroids. So basically, it has to do with your very specific design based on exactly where you were born, what time, place, all the things, right?
Okay.
But what's really interesting about my human design specifically, and something that I've always known about myself, is I have had this ability my whole life to see into people. And I firmly believe, and I believe it to my core, that people are truly powerful beyond measure. I mean, if you look at some of the crazy stories and you see, people doing amazing things, meeting feats that they, you never thought that they could reach, or whatever the heck it is, we all have that intrinsically, like, within us. I think that we are just so programmed to need to go a certain way, or live somebody else's life, or do certain whatever it is. And the truth is like, you already know. I mean, literally, I will tell you 9 times out of 10, the advice I give in almost every group that I comment on is, number one, you're right to have whatever feelings you're having. Number two, we don't have enough context to truly help give you appropriate advice here, because we don't know. And number three, you know the right answer if you really truly dig within yourself and you ask yourself questions, and you really get some context about it, and you can make the right call, because we all have that within us. We just don't tend to tap it very often. And it makes me sad, because you're talking about purpose. And I think the truth is that everybody knows what their purpose is deep inside them. It's just whether they're willing to release it, or if we're going to sit on it, or we're going to, make all kinds of excuses for it, or we're not going to step into it, or whatever the case may be. And that's your choice.
Yeah. Or it's like they see the purpose as much bigger than them, which I appreciate, and then they question whether or not they can meet that purpose. They can bring the person they are to fulfill that purpose. But I mean, if we think about it, man, that's literally what like the journey of life is like we become that person to fulfill that purpose. I want to ask you, because I'm curious about this. You said you see into people. And I'm curious, like, what you see into with this conversation. Because let me just preface, I understand, I know, listen, I have a mean resting bitch face. I get it. I know that people will tell me like, you look focused, you look like you're like whatever, determined or whatever. I'm like, yeah, but I'm kind of like, I'm a very open person. If we just talk, like, just because I look that way doesn't mean that I am that way. Although I don't know, I guess I am focused on some things, but yeah, we were talking about self-awareness on your podcast earlier, and like, knowing that I have that sort of, look, I guess, that sort of RBF. I mean, it depends on what I'm doing too. Like the gym isn't really a good example because because I know, like, I don't know, I'm just very focused in the gym. But yeah, I was curious about that.
So you're curious on whether I think you have a horrible resting bitch face, or
well,
what
I'm
I
just
see
curious, like
in you.
when you say you see into people, like what do you mean by that? Like what? Because
So
I guess my question is, like, recently I've tried to, how can I say this? I feel like, again, we were talking about self-awareness on your podcast, like how you come across to certain people. I feel like sometimes on certain topics, I'm very intense, and it's not that I'm trying to water myself down, but I'm trying to be aware of that more in like certain situations. Like some things I'm really passionate about, and to different people that means different things. It's interpreted different ways, and I'm not trying to change that about me. I'm just trying to be more aware of when I'm in those situations. So, for example, I was talking to somebody recently, and this was like in a sales thing, and I noticed that, like, when I introduced myself, as soon as I started speaking, I don't know if I said something like too much, but the person had a reaction basically, and I was like, okay, well, let me tone down, because I don't know, I don't know. I mean, I don't think I'm yelling. I think sometimes people think I'm yelling.
You, like, I mean, most of the rest of us sometimes overthink it. I mean, I think the truth is that you have to be genuinely you. And as long as you are being cognizantly aware of the fact that you are not trying to step on others' toes or others' feelings, the truth is that sometimes that is going to happen. Right. I mean, I'm a big personality, and I joke that I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and it's the truth. There are people who they don't like whatever it is. They don't like that I'm a woman. They don't like that I'm strong-willed. They don't like that I don't wear makeup. Whatever it is, like, fill in the freaking blank, right? I'm not gonna change myself. Do I try to adjust to make sure that I'm understanding somebody's opinion? I mean, absolutely, right? But the truth is that I don't think you should change who you are. I mean, I see that the reason, in my opinion, you started this podcast is you want more. You want more depth, you want more purpose or whatever, right? Like, the landscaping business is great and it pays the bills, but the truth is that you, somewhere inside of you, feel like you were meant for more and meant to do more, and therefore this fulfills some of that piece, right? I mean, no different than me. I've known since I can't even tell you. I don't even know when the thought came to me, but I knew that I was supposed to do something big, life-changing, world-changing big. I honestly couldn't even tell you 100% exactly how that's going to look. It used to scare me. I used to not know. I know that mortgage and all the financial piece had a lot to do with it, because I was never able to really be let out of there. Like, that was very part of the package. I just always knew that. And a lot of times I think we have all of that already built within us. Like, we already have all that power. We already have all of the knowing. We already have all of the things. We just let all the noise consume us. We let all of the things going on outside of us, like, dictate what's going on inside of us. And it's full. Like, yes, you need outside influence to be able to get context, to be able to get perspective. You need all of that. Don't misunderstand me. That part is true. But there's a difference in getting context outside of yourself and listening to the noise. I mean, I love my mother. She is a wonderful woman. I will preface by saying that. Last year, when I decided to write a book, and again, remind yourself that I am a creative writing English major. As a child, I was always holding book in hand. I have always liked to write. So this is not like a surprise, right? It's not like, surprise, Jacqueline's writing a book. Like, you know what I mean? That's not a surprise here.
Right.
She literally said to me, "Oh, so we're writing a book now." And
Hmm.
she said it in that context, like, not, "Oh, we're writing a book, like, good job, Cody." Like, no,
Right.
that was not how it was said, okay?
Yep.
I had 2 choices because this is my mother, like, a very big influential person in my life and in my family. I could listen to the noise, which I wanted to a little bit, right? Like, here is this big influential person, or I could do what I knew I was supposed to do, which is write the damn book. So
Right.
I wrote the damn book because that is what I was supposed to do. And my path doesn't necessarily have to make sense to everybody else, right?
Hmm.
Just like when you're talking to people, if they're not on the same vibrational level as you are, they're not necessarily going to be able to hear you. So don't dim your light because they're not willing to elevate theirs. That's ridiculous. Right. And so self
Yeah.
awareness is great, but you also aren't going to change any of that piece. And I don't think you should.
No. Yeah. No, yeah. Just to be abundantly clear, like I'm not trying to like I said, water myself down or change. Like
I don't think you
self
could water
awareness.
yourself down even if you wanted to be real.
What's that?
So I don't think you really could water yourself down even if you wanted to be real.
I couldn't, man, because I wouldn't be happy. Like I would not. I would be such. I would be miserable because like I wouldn't be living or saying or doing what I thought was supposed to be me. But I don't know. Anyway, I think self awareness and like self filtering are two different things. I mean, obviously, you don't want to be just a jerk to everybody. Like that's what I'm saying. But like, you can't. There's and I don't know if you believe in this or if you get into this space or not. But the Bible mentions a Bible verse, which is "Do not cast pearls before swine," and I love that verse, man. That's one of my most favorite verses because essentially what that means is don't offer a message or a thing to someone who can't see the value in it, and you're
So
not
it's really funny that you bring up this verse because I was on a call with a human design coach earlier this week, and we were having this conversation about my human design because for a very long time, I felt very afraid to step into myself. I felt very afraid to really go out in the way that I needed to go
Yep.
because I had been told by a lot of people that I was too much
Mm,
energy, too much emotion, too much passion, too much fill in the blank. Okay. My whole life, I had been told that. And my whole life, I had known that there was this other narrative. And a lot of it really does tie into the human design piece. And so I went to this session really kind of looking for a little bit of clarity surrounding not only why am I certain ways that I am,
right.
right? But that I wasn't wrong to step into things the way that I saw to step
Yep.
into them. And the way she described it was she quoted the Bible verse about pearls and swine. She literally was talking about, I don't give, pearls to or diamonds to my 10-year-old because she doesn't have an appreciation for them. And like she was describing this. And I she was right because there is a lot of times that I feel like as people, we do that. We are minimizing, we're playing small because, well, and especially, and I'll speak specifically in this case to women because I do most of my coaching and things like that with women. We think somehow that because there has been societal pressure for a long time, right, that we're not able to step into our own. I firmly believe that you can be a completely confident, on your own, step into yourself woman and still stand beside a strong man, and it can be a compliment. It doesn't have to be where you're the big power player and he's down here, or he's the big power player and you have to diminish yourself down here. That does not have to exist, right?
Mm,
And I feel like that's what society is pushing. Forever, it was the message of, oh, well, you just have to be the dutiful wife and like stay behind the scenes and don't be powerful and all the things, right? And then now we're in this like women empowerment phase where, like, screw the men and like who, whatever. And it's like the two can coexist, right? Like
right. Right.
they can. And in fact, it was intended to be a partnership. If you
Mm,
do believe in
yep.
the Bible, there's a reason that Eve came from Adam's rib.
Mm,
The bone came from the rib, not from his foot.
right.
God had all the choices in the universe, and he picked the rib, not the foot. The rib is
Mm,
the side. It is the side of you, not, you know what I mean? And so if that's
yep.
not a perfectly clear depiction of being able to stand beside, I don't really know what is.
Yeah. Empowerment of one is not degradation of the other.
That is
You
correct.
know.
But for some odd reason, I feel like society feels like that somebody needs to win all the time. And I'm like, why can't we all win?
Well, my thing is like, so women and men are clearly different. Like there's clear differences, there's similarities, so
Absolutely.
whatever. But like you said it the best. The balance of the two of those differences, like they're complementary differences. And I'm not saying that I'm not going to get off on the homosexuality thing or whatever, but we're talking about heterosexual here, obviously. But it's like a man and a woman, I don't want to say they complete each other because that implies that they're not complete beforehand. But it's like that relationship is something that it is, or it is something it could be
No, it
because of those
elevates.
differences. Because
It
what?
elevates.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
So it's
that's the
not
way
a
to put it.
completion, it's an elevation, right?
Yeah.
It's like more people. I mean, it's the literally the image of the cord and the
Mm,
multiple strands of the cord, right? Like the cord itself is strong by itself, but when you start
right.
taking multiple strands, like you see what I mean? That makes
Right.
stronger rope,
Yeah. Yeah. But that's a really good way to put it. Yeah.
right? It's that
Um.
image.
Look, man, I could keep going, but I gotta go. uh. So okay, let me ask you this: where can you be found? Website, social media, anything?
Oh yes. So you can find me, let's see, for Facebook, it's I think Jax Crider. If it's well no, actually you can find it under Jax Crider. Same Jax Crider, so JAX Crider, that's on Instagram. If you're on TikTok, it's under my businesses, so it's either PBJ Mortgage or Financial Mastery Simplified. So there's all different kinds. Our actual website for the main business is going to be pbjteam.com because no one can spell mortgage. That's the truth. Even people in it can't spell it. So there we go. But anyways, yeah, I mean, my big thing with people just in general is I really do. I feel like people are powerful beyond measure. I feel like if you want to own a home, you can own a home. If you want
Yep.
to be financially successful, you can be that. And if I have the tools or the resources to help you along the way, be it free or paid, I'm here for it, right? Like I just want you to succeed on the level that you want to go. And if that means you live your life in a van down by the river, traveling all over the United States because that makes you happy, awesome. Or if it means
Right.
you want to live in a 40,000 square foot mansion someday, um, also awesome. I'll help you on either path. Doesn't matter to me.
So we've talked about a lot, but for some reason, I feel like I'm going to hear something that I haven't heard from you yet when I ask this question.
Uh-oh.
So, and maybe not, but I have a feeling. So if you could share one of the most important lessons you've ever learned, it can be your personal life if you're comfortable sharing, or your career, your very very broad, vast, huge career of different areas.
I know. Like I said, I'm
um,
such a nerd.
well, I
Um,
mean that's not a bad thing. But what do you think? What's one of the most important lessons you've ever learned?
I mean, I think it ties into some of the things that I've already said. For me, I turned 40 and for some reason, something inside of me broke. I stopped caring about what everybody thought. I couldn't force myself into everybody else's box. And I just decided that what had been running through me my whole life, which is that I'm not someone who follows all the rules. I am always creating my own, a life of my own way, that was going to be the way. And
Mm,
that is how it can be for everyone, right? Like, yes, you being you, it's not changing the math or changing the realities, right? I'm not forcing the sky to be some other color than blue, okay? Like that's not what I'm saying, but you can literally change your life by just stepping in your own power, just leaning in, leaning into the uncomfortable and doing it day over day, month over month, year over year. And it's not easy at first. It sucks. It's kind of like when you start working out, right? Like you're like, "Oh my gosh, my whole body hurts. I hurt in places I don't even know I had." And then you do it the next day and it's a little bit better and you do it the next day. You know what I mean? Like and
mm,
stepping into that power consistently is probably the biggest thing I ever learned is that most of everything I ever needed was within myself if I literally would just learn to listen and learn to gain perspective and learn to gain knowledge. And no amount of me reading books or going on 8 million different paths was ever going to change that. So I was seeking something that already existed inside me all along.
yeah, man, that's really powerful. I really appreciate that it comes from within. you mentioned sort of like being in those spaces, like having those, I guess those hits or those failures or whatever. You didn't say failures, but I think we all understand that like diamonds are made from intense heat, intense pressure. But we were talking about pearls earlier. Do you know that pearls are a reaction to trauma? Did you
Mhm.
know that?
Yep. It's
Yeah.
sand within an oyster, and
Yep.
they put it over the top, and that because I love pearls. I think that they're beautiful, and
Yeah.
I own quite a few of them, and yeah, I mean that's it is. It's such an interesting thing, and I think that's the whole thing, right? Like
Mm.
this life, and it's funny you mentioned the failure piece. So I actually don't believe in regret. And people say to me all the time, like, actually, I got a huge fight with my current husband about the whole idea of regret at one point. Um, because he was like, "Well, you have to regret things." I said, "No." I said, "Because every single thing you do, every single path you take is a lesson that you learn." And so, can I look back and maybe wish that I would have made a different choice? Sure. But I don't see that as regret, right? I see
Mm.
it as perspective and as, whatever, because the truth is that I wouldn't be the person that I am had I
Right.
not made some of those decisions, learned some of those lessons, gained that perspective, right? Like, so you can choose. You can look at it as failure. You can let it destroy you, or you can look at it as another step in your path, another maybe little road bump, right, along the way. And
Yep.
do with it what you will. And I look at life like that in general. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, and I say this and I mean it in all earnest, every single interaction you make, no matter whether it was bad or good, is an opportunity to learn. Every single interaction.
Mm.
And so you could choose to do that, or you could choose to come out of it pissed off or whatever the case may be and whatever. And it's easy to be that way. But if you look at it that way, your whole life changes.
That's actually a really good way to put it because when we regret something, we usually like we regret we had this experience or did this thing or didn't do this thing or whatever. But it's like the reason you probably regret it is it was unpleasant, but you learned something from it. Like something came out of that. So like if you regret it and it didn't happen, that means you wouldn't have that thing that you got out of that thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a little shift. That's a mindset shift right there for sure.
And it's weird because I just have always felt that way. I mean, like, we didn't dive into this at all, but my first marriage, my ex-husband was incredibly verbally and even towards the very end, fairly physically abusive. And a lot of people are like, "Do you regret marrying him?" And I said, "I don't." In fact, we literally had this conversation like a week or so ago where people were like, "You still have photos of your first wedding up on Facebook? Like, you can go look in my like photo albums or whatever." And I said, "Yeah." "Why?" And I said, "Why? He's a part of my past. Why would I erase that? Like, why would I
Mm,
pretend like it didn't happen? Like, that doesn't do me any good, right? Like,
right.
that's not helpful. Like, that I don't understand that concept. Like, I'm not wiping that person off the planet. I cannot like what happened. I can dislike some of the outcomes, but it doesn't mean that that period of my life didn't exist."
Right. Yeah. Listen, man, I really got to go. I could keep going. Hey, guys, I appreciate everybody tuning in today. If you enjoyed this podcast or enjoyed this episode, you can find more at Pure Wisdom Podcast. This is on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Rumble, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple and Google Podcasts. There you can subscribe, like, and share and interact with all of our content. Again, we appreciate it, and we will see you next time.